Welcome back. You're watching the news in detail. We start a news bulletin from Yemen, where 60 government coalition soldiers are killed in an attack on a military training camp in southern city of Marib. Now, state media claims Houthi rebels attacked the site with ballistic missiles and drones. Medics say dozens of others are wounded. The rebels have not yet claimed responsibility for the attack. The Houthis, who hold Sana'a and most of Yemen's urban centers, say they are fighting a corrupt system. The civil war, now in its fifth year, has killed over 100,000 people, triggering one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. In Lebanon, fresh clashes between police and protesters have wounded more than 200 people from both sides in the capital, Beirut. Police shot tear gas and water cannon to disperse the anti-government protesters who threw rocks and pots at them. Clashes broke out after demonstrators tried to reach Parliament Square in Beirut. The Lebanese are protesting over delays in forming a new cabinet to address the country's economic crisis. Lebanon's President Michel Aoun asked the army and security commanders to restore calm in central Beirut. Security forces say the situation is now under control in Beirut after a night of violent clashes. The unrest stemmed from anger at corruption and the rising cost of living in October last year. Meanwhile, in Syria, U.S. troops have allegedly blocked Russian soldiers from reaching oil fields in northeastern Hasaka. Now, this comes amid a dispute between Moscow and Washington about the Rumelin oil field. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says the U.S. soldiers did not let a Russian military convoy pass through the checkpoint in the border city of Al-Malikiya. The Russian soldiers later returned to their camp northwest of Hasaka. The U.S. says it has imposed sanctions on Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Brigadier General Hassan Shawarpur. The State Department claimed the general commanded units are blamed for a massacre of protesters in November. The department said it is designating Shawarpur under a U.S. law banning officials of foreign governments. Earlier, the State Department said it had received videos of the Revolutionary Guards opening fire on protesters in Mashhad County. Shawarpur is a commander in Khuzestan province, where Mashhad is located. The announcement comes amid high tensions between Tehran and Washington. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has called for de-escalation in the Middle East. Meeting with his Qatari counterpart in Doha, he said conflicts must be resolved through dialogue. Qureshi apprised Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani of the Indian atrocities in occupied Kashmir. The foreign minister said a new conflict in the region is in no one's interest. He also said that recent progress in talks between the Taliban and the US have paved the way for peace in Afghanistan. Qatar's Foreign Minister Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani lauded Pakistan's role in the Afghan peace process. U.S. Assistant Deputy State Secretary for South Asia, Alice Wells, is arriving in Islamabad today on a 4-day visit. The U.S. State Department said the visit is part of her 10-day tour to the region. Deputy Secretary Wells will head out to Sri Lanka and India after Pakistan. Department said that she will meet senior government officials in the civil society to discuss issues of bilateral and regional concern. Her visit follows Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi's 3-day visit to the U.S. Now, threatening people opposing the citizenship law, India's ruling BJP leader Dilip Ghosh says they will soon be unable to show their faces. Earlier, Ghosh called the demonstrators parasites for coming on the streets against the controversial law. In a rally, he said those refusing to show registration papers proving their Hindu identity will soon face consequences. Meanwhile, another BJP minister, Chandra Sarangi, said the new bill is atonement for the sin of partition committed by the Congress. In a rally, Sarangi said the Amendment Act should have been passed 70 years ago. Meanwhile, in India, women protesting in the capital city of New Delhi have slammed the BJP government's allegations of bribery. Now, this follows allegations that women coming to the protest were being paid 500 rupees per day. In order to refute the allegations, the protesters displayed posters that read, "No cash, no payment." Talking to the media, the organizers said the protesters have been asked not to take money from anyone by any means. Protesters said they have gathered to protect the 500 years which their ancestors have dedicated to India. They fear that if they don't raise their voices now, their children might be in danger in the future. The Shaheen Bagh sit-in has inspired nationwide rallies as similar demonstrations are being held in Bihar, Uttar Pradesh and Mumbai. Now, rival camps and their foreign backers are arriving in Berlin for a summit to discuss ways to end the long-running war in Libya. Germany and the UN hope to persuade Russia, Turkey and the UAE, as well as Egypt, to get their opposing camps to agree on a lasting truce in Tripoli. Libya's internationally recognized Prime Minister Fayez Sarraj and the commander of the Eastern Forces, Khalifa Haftar, will attend the conference. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has already arrived in Berlin. Leaders of Russia, Turkey, France and the UK have also confirmed their participation, while representatives of Algeria, Egypt, the UAE and China are also expected to attend. The UN says participants will sign a 6-point draft communique calling for a permanent ceasefire at the end of the conference. It said the draft will also implement an arms embargo and reforms in the security and economic sector. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump's legal team has dismissed the impeachment charges as unlawful and a dangerous attack on democracy. Now, the response came as the Democrats filed their arguments for the proceedings. Trump's legal team said the charges are a brazen attempt to interfere with the 2020 presidential election. The team is led by White House counsel Pat Cipollone and Trump's personal lawyer, Jay Sekulow. The lawyers said they are challenging the impeachment on both procedural and constitutional grounds. They claim that the president did nothing wrong and had not been treated fairly. Opening statements in the trial will begin next week. Now, Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro says he is open to direct negotiations with the United States. In an interview published by a leading U.S. paper, Maduro said he was still comfortably in charge. Now, Maduro said instead of ongoing confrontations, respectful dialogue between both governments, it can create a win-win situation. He's also said that U.S. oil companies can benefit from Venezuela's oil if Washington were to lift sanctions. Maduro also expressed his willingness to talk with opposition leader Juan Guaido, but dismissed his central demand that he step down. The U.S. and over 50 other countries recognize Guaido as the country's legitimate interim president. Despite crushing U.S. sanctions, Maduro remains in power and is backed by Venezuela's military as well as Russia, China and Cuba. In France, police have arrested several people as thousands of yellow vest protesters return to the streets of Paris. Under a rain of projectiles thrown by the demonstrators, police used water cannon and tear gas to disperse the crowd. The protesters shouted slogans against President Emmanuel Macron and the police. The rallies came on the 45th day of pension reform strike that has hit the public transport system. The transport unions have joined forces with the Yellow Vests, who accuse Macron of ruling on behalf of an urban elite. Belgian police said they have arrested 185 people after Extinction Rebellion protesters disrupted the Brussels Motor Show. Campaigners smeared cars with fake blood and staged die-ins around the displays. More in this report.
Some activists unfurled a banner reading "Stop CO2 emissions" at the main entry of the show, while others carried out protests at stands inside. A protester with his face covered in black oil chanted "Shell kills" before lying down opposite the oil and gas company's booth. The group said it had called the protest to correct the deceitful image the car industry portrays of itself.
Que la vérité soit dite. Alors, It has been called the show of lies because we no longer believe in the car industry to provide solutions to this ecological and climate crisis. It has lied in the past and will continue to lie to us if we do not stop it.
Demonstrators were quickly taken away by police and security personnel after they briefly blocked access to the area. Later, demonstrators carried out a die-in outside the entrance and were also removed swiftly by the police without resisting arrest.
The aim is really to enable citizens to say to themselves, we do not want to continue to be under pressure from the car industry, because what we need is another model of mobility that promotes a whole host of alternatives that are socially and ecologically just as well.
According to the organizers of this show, over 500,000 people are expected to visit the 10-day car show, one of the largest of its kind in the country.
UK's Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are set to lose their titles and will not be receiving public funds for their royal duties. In a statement, Buckingham Palace announced the couple will no longer formally represent the Queen. Now, Queen Elizabeth said a constructive way forward has been found after months of conversations. The Queen said she recognizes the challenges the couple has experienced as a result of intense scrutiny over the last 2 years. The Queen said she supports their wish for a more independent life, and the couple will repay $3 million of taxpayer money spent on renovating Frogmore Cottage, which will remain their UK family home. The palace said the new arrangement comes into effect in spring this year. Welcome back to News in Detail. Now, 10 burned corpses of indigenous musicians have been discovered in a vehicle in Mexico's southern Guerrero state. The state prosecutor says the bodies were found in Chilapa municipality after someone called an emergency line. The prosecutor said the victims were between the ages of 15 and 42 and belonged to the Nahuas indigenous group. Officials blamed the Los Ardilos cartel for the attack. A regional indigenous leader said members of Sensation musical group were returning to Alcozacan after a performance. Despite President Andrés Manuel Obrador's promise to root out violence, nearly 29,000 murders were reported last year. In Mexico, a red-tide algae bloom on the southern Pacific coast has killed hundreds of green sea turtles. According to officials, 292 turtles are killed, while a few have been rescued. Watch this report on how conservationists are trying to save the rare turtles.
Sick turtles are temporarily placed on floaties in shallow pools as they recover at the Mexican Turtle Center in Oaxaca. They are removed from the ocean to be nursed back to health before being released into the wild again.
We are treating 11 turtles who are in recovery. One has a life vest as it can't breathe very well, and it needs support so it doesn't drown. The treatment they're undergoing involves bicarbonates, active carbonates, and histamines.
Autopsies showed that the sick turtles consumed sea salps with high levels of algae toxins brought on from the red tide. The phenomenon is caused by algal blooms that can be so strong to turn the coastal waters red. As a result, oxygen in the water is depleted and the algae releases toxins that can harm wildlife.
Across the Oaxaca coast, there have been reports of 292 dead turtles. Now the toxins from the red tide are coming down. It's estimated that in the coming week, the phenomena will go down, and also the number of turtles that died.
Experts say vast expanses of red algae are caused by several factors, including climate change.
7 trekkers have gone missing in Nepal's northwest Himalayan region after an avalanche hit their trail. Police say trekkers included 4 South Koreans and 3 local guides. The officials said heavy rain and snowfall triggered this landslide. They said the area where the avalanche struck the group is estimated to be about 150 kilometers northwest of capital Kathmandu. 4 helicopters have been deployed for the search and rescue mission. Officials are saying rough weather conditions are making the rescue operation difficult. In Germany, the historic island of Helgoland, that was once used as a practice bombing site for British airmen after World War II, has now turned into a nursery for North Sea seals. attracting a number of tourists and photographers. This report will tell you how.
Around 1,000 of the animals flock to this archipelago in the North Sea for the birthing season between November and January. But it's the newborn seal pups who are the true stars of the show.
They are so close, so alive. I often see them on television, but it's even more exciting here.
For safety, tourists and photographers are asked to stay 30 metres away from the animals, who can weigh up to 300 kilos when they reach adulthood and have been known to bite if they feel threatened. Keeping an eye on both the seals and their observers are volunteers from the Jordsand Association and 2 rangers employed by Heligoland's town hall.
Sometimes tourists forget their limits and get too close. This has negative consequences in the summer because the seals get used to people. They'll want to play in the water and they can injure swimmers.
To keep excited tourists from getting too close, especially during birthing season, wooden boardwalks have been created. For now, the populations are manageable, even if sometimes a cheeky youngster makes its way beyond the barriers. But some fear a rise in water temperatures and levels could lead to greater seal numbers, leaving less space for both seals and enthusiastic tourists.
There are more and more of them, and I think it's because there's lots of food here. But we're at sea level here, and if the water levels increase, we'll probably have new challenges to face.
The Jordsand Association says there have been more than 520 births since November. Once weaned, the baby seals will head to the water of the North Sea, but they will return in spring to change their fur, much to the delight of photographers and wildlife observers.
Studio Lani, a Nigerian boutique selling furniture and interior designs incorporating traditional designs, is making waves in Africa. The brains behind the project, Lani Adeyode, says she wants to merge African culture with modern designs, making a niche for herself in the world of art. This report has more.
Lani Adeyode designs everything from patio furniture to lighting fixtures. She trained as an interior designer in New York, but made her way back to Nigeria to reconnect with her heritage.
I think there's something really interesting about being in this point in time now where we as Africans, there are other African designers like myself who are exploring and trying to sort of create their own narrative that showcases our beautiful, diverse culture in a positive light.
Studio Lani takes inspiration from a number of traditional African themes. Many of the studio's pieces are inspired by batter drum.
The talking drum for me is such an iconic West African musical instrument. I think what it represents, it really was one of the first telecommunication devices, if you think about it.
Studio Lani's work with traditional artisans also helps empower communities and improve people's livelihoods. Lani Adeyode's ultimate goal is to get global recognition for traditional Nigerian designs. The designer is well on her way to achieving this objective and has showcased her work throughout Africa as well as Europe.
In the United States, the next generation of high-tech instruments is on display at the National Association of Music Merchants Expo. These included traditional instruments like the harmonica and ukulele that have been given a modern digital makeover. Details in this report.
Thousands of musicians and music lovers flock to the NAMM Expo every year. It is considered the global crossroads of new music, products and cutting edge in audio technology. This year's event in Anaheim, California is previewing products from over 7,000 brands. These included a smart ukulele by the Chinese company Capma.
It's an interactive Bluetooth app-enabled learning system for people who always wanted to play a ukulele to connect to a phone app and learn to play by teaching you the chords, the strumming. So it's the world's first smart ukulele.
Swedish company Lackholm also put their latest invention, a digital chromatic harmonica, on display. Its purpose is to let you play the harmonica without annoying family members or neighbors.
So this was started as a hobby project. It was just, I could say, it was born out of a need to play silently. So I play chromatic harmonica, but it makes a lot of noise, and I have a wife and kids and neighbors. So I decided to try to build a harmonica that you can play silently with headphones.
The event also features live music and lectures on the latest trends in music and audio production. This year's expo will conclude on 19th of January.
And now let's take a look at how the weather is faring in your city. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.news.